my first influence in the direction of charity came when I was a little girl. I went to the Emmanuel Synagogue Sunday School, and we had to contribute money. We had to bring coins every week to Sunday school. And my mom and I would go down to the train station in Hartford, and I was allowed to buy the Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies comic book. And it came out once a month, and that was a dime. And the other dime, she would give me 20 cents, and the other dime went into this little container that was for Sunday school. So I kind of grew up with the idea that we don't keep everything for ourselves, we give. And that's when I was a little girl. Well, there were always the religious ones, because going to Sunday school, it seemed like there was always a need in religion. And it was shortly after the Second World War that I was growing up. So you had a lot of people, displaced persons, and a lot of Holocaust survivors. One of the things that I remember is my father driving me to Sunday school in New Britain. And because I went to several different Sunday schools, I went in New Britain because his mother lived there in New Britain. And he would visit with his mother while I went to Sunday school. And we would pick up these two little girls who were Holocaust survivors. They even had their numbers on their arms, because they weren't any older than I was. And it really made an impression on me. And I thought, wow, whatever we have in life, we really have to share with other people. We can't keep it all for ourselves. Well, my college, St. Joseph College, I was actually director of alumni relations there, but I always volunteered to raise funds. I'd call everybody in my class and talk up about paying the sisters back, because we had nuns who taught us, and they were wonderful to us. They were just very well-educated women and very dedicated to us. And very nice to me. They treated me very well. In those days, St. Joseph College mainly had Roman Catholic girls there, girls of the Roman Catholic faith. And there were only, I think, 2 of us who were Jewish in the whole school and 1 Lutheran. As a matter of fact, I even worked for the treasurer of the college because I was a mathematics major. And so she needed an assistant, and the academic advisor there told me to apply for the job. And I was concerned about that, because I thought, well, wouldn't they want to give that job to one of the girls who's Catholic? And so when I went for my interview, was with Sister Joseph Marks, and she was sitting at her desk, and I came in and sat down, and she was asking me about my background and everything, educational background. And then towards the end of the interview, I said to her, you know, sister, I'm Jewish. And she ignored the question, and I went on to answer another question, and then I said to her, you know, sister, I'm Jewish. And she said, I heard you the first time you told me that. And it obviously made no difference to her whatsoever. And so it taught me a lesson in being open, and warm and accepting of everyone. I think that's one of the reasons why I never judge people or assume any stereotypes about groups that you hear, was my welcoming at St. Joseph College. Oh, and animal causes too. I've always contributed and volunteered for calendar drives and things like that for animal causes. Well, I'd like to help in the scholarship program that I'm funding, because that's very important to me. But as far as the needs of Hartford go, having grown up there, having loved the city, having walked downtown with my mother, having visited the Wadsworth with my dad, my father would take me to the Marble Pillar for lunch on a Saturday, having practically grown up in the movie houses there, because what do you do with a child who, when it's raining out, you send them to the movies, especially if you live in an apartment. And Hartford needs to be a vibrant city again. And I think people are obsessed with crime, and I don't think they need to be. I go into Hartford, I feel very safe. And the other thing is the buildings. It's a shame they've taken down so many of those beautiful buildings. There was another cause that I was very interested in, and that was Gray Lodge. Are you familiar with Gray Lodge? Well, I grew up around the corner from Gray Lodge. So whenever my parents took me for an ice cream cone at Peterson's, we'd always pick up one of the girls at Gray Lodge and take her with us. And our class always had birthday parties for the girls who lived at Gray Lodge. And I would go up in the cupola above Gray Lodge, and I'd look out over the city, and it was simply beautiful. And I had a reason to go to Gray Lodge a few years ago, and I went up to the cupola and looked out over the city, and it was devastating. It looked like a bomb had hit the city. All the buildings are gone. Everything is a parking lot. And that's really a crime, because there are beautiful buildings there. All the neighborhoods are, destroyed. Mm. So I think Hartford needs to be rebuilt. It needs to be revitalized so that people feel comfortable living there. St. Joseph College has their school of pharmacology there. And UConn is now putting their school in. These people need to move into Hartford. Here I say that as I sit in Avon. But sure. Well, I selected it because I know that young girls growing up have and do not have a father in the home for whatever reason. In my case, my father died when I was 15. But it's very difficult on young women without a father. So I thought to give these girls a hand, the way I got a hand, because I had scholarships, to go on with their education. And I cannot say enough about continuing education, going to college. I was a liberal arts major. I majored in mathematics. And those liberal studies are very important. Colleges are not to be used as training places. We don't train you for a job. We educate you. And that education has stood me in good stead. I've had all kinds of careers and jobs. Do you have a copy of my resume?
Yes.
Okay, well, you can see I've worked in major school systems in about 12 companies, and all because I had this wonderful education. Well, I heard about the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving through the media, through the Current, and through different magazines I read, and just the publicity that it has received. And I immediately loved the title of it, Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, and it uses the places in Hartford as a recipient of this giving. So that struck a chord with me, having grown up in Hartford and having liked the city. So that was the first thing. I joined because I needed somebody to manage my estate after I'm gone. I need, someone to do that. What better place than the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, because they can supervise my will, my ethical will, if you want to call it that, and decide where the monies will go. They will interview students. They'll do all that. So I immediately had my lawyers name the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving as my, I guess, what would you call it, trust advisors or whatever. And then when I was I go to the events, I always attended the yearly events that they had to describe what they did. We always had this wonderful program. Used to be at the Hartford Insurance Group. That was one of the places that they had this getting together, these get-togethers, and they talk about how the money was divided up. And I thought, wow, every one of those causes appealed to me. So I kept on, and then I found out about the Catalyst Group. And I said, that would be a good thing for me to immediately get involved in. And so a few years ago I joined Catalyst, and I go to the meetings, and I contribute to that, and I help select the charity that will be the recipient of the funds. Well, the one that's the most recent one that was held at the Collective Arts Center. Number one, I've never been to the Collective Arts Center. It's on the corner of Woodland and Albany, and I know the neighborhood well, but that building is fantastic. And I knew Jackie McLean, it's Dolly McLean, because I've seen her at different charity events and all that, so I knew who she was. She's, a society matron in Hartford, and so I recognized her right away and introduced myself. And so I got to see that, and the performances. I'm very much interested in the performing arts. I'll tell you this story. Many years ago, when I was 7 years old, my mother had this friend who lived in New Rochelle, New York, and her brother, the friend's brother, was manager of a theater, a Broadway theater. And they had an extra ticket. One of the women who had the ticket was ill and couldn't go. And so they were looking around as to who to give this extra ticket to. And there's this 7-year-old little girl, so I went. They didn't think I'd be interested at all in it. And I sat at the edge of my seat the whole time. I loved it. And I also went backstage to meet Carol Channing. Well, that was so exciting for me. So I became very interested in performing arts. And when I saw those little girls perform just recently at the Collective Artists event, there were 2 events held there. One was the performance part, where the director from New York City came in and had the girls do a dance, and the other was where the children were stepping up from the 5th grade and from kindergarten, the Step Up program. I said, how marvelous is this? What a great way to spend money. And they were so cute. And the parents, in the second event, the parents were so proud of them. But the first event was very interesting because the girls were so talented and they learned so much. No, that's up to them. I was a mathematics major in college, and that stood me in very good stead because as a woman that was very unique to be at this age, at my age then, a math major, got me my first job in engineering, which was at Animastat on the corner of Flower Street, which probably isn't much in existence anymore, that runs between Capitol Avenue and Farmington. Worked. Animastat made the air diffusers for air conditioning and refrigeration units. And they needed somebody who could type and who was familiar with the technical terms. So the fellows from Trinity, that was a single-sex college in those days, the boys couldn't type. So here I was with all the technical terms and being able to type, and I was hired for this fantastic job. And I worked at the building there. The engineers showed me all the experiments that they were doing. They'd take me to trade shows in New York City. They were absolutely wonderful to me. So my curiosity for engineering peaked at that point, and I went on to major in math, and then I got a master's degree in math, and eventually was a mathematics teacher, but then went into engineering. Well, my mother was the one. My mother, who graduated from high school, whose mother wanted her to go to Hunter College. They lived in New York. And my mother didn't go. And she was a clerk. She wasn't a secretary, but a clerk. And then when my father died, she really couldn't go out and earn a living. And so she said to me, you are going to college, and you're going to be a teacher. Immediately, I did not want to be a teacher, because that's the way we rebelled against what our parents wanted. But I had to go to college. If I wanted to live, I had to go to college. And I'll tell you, that was it. And as far as math went, it was an interest. I enjoyed math. And no one ever told me I couldn't do math. And my father, when he was alive, he never said, well, you're a girl, you can't do this, you can't do that. Well, it's a very selfish reason. It makes you feel good. It's just so great. I was a teacher for many years, and I loved my students. As a matter of fact, one student I had, she went to Hall High School, the new Hall High School, or the newer Hall High School, because I'm sure there's going to be even newer one. I met her when she was 14. She was in my geometry class. I was actually supervisor of math for the town, but I taught one class, and she was in there. And West Hartford had a different philosophy. When you grow up in Hartford, I don't think you expect as many material things as when you grow up in West Hartford. And one of the things in West Hartford that they had was a jazz band, and the dancers and the jazz players would go to Europe on a tour. And if you were one of their teachers, then you had to prepare your student to go to Europe and miss all of that education, and so you had to get them ready. And she needed help in math, so every day after school she would come in and I would tutor her in the math that she would be missing, because as she explained to me, math is very hard for me, so I need this help. And I said, of course, Jennifer, and you'll get this help. And then when she'd leave, I'd think to myself, I have to commit every afternoon so that she can dance in Europe. Why can't she dance in the United States? What is it about West Hartford that we have to send these children to Europe? However, she went, and the short part of the story is we are friends today. She's a young woman in her 40s. She has 2 children. If you look around, you'll see pictures of them. The family, her husband and 2 children. We traveled to California together. I'm an intimate part of their lives. And that's far more than any dress that I bought that I remember. So helping people and doing something for someone else is the warmest, most wonderful feeling.